Welcome back to this episode of the Law of Relevancy podcast. Today we're joined by one of the hottest young entrepreneurs in all of Tampa Bay, Dr. Jackie Darna. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Wow, that was an introduction.
Well, you're starting to become a really big deal around here.
Well, thank you. That means the world to me, honestly. Definitely from humble beginnings, that's for sure.
Well, you just were on the cover of TBVW Magazine, a magazine that highlights CEOs and business leaders all across the Bay. And what's great about the magazine, it does a really good job of highlighting the good things that people are doing.
Absolutely.
So
it's more of like getting up underneath of the story.
Yeah.
So Bridget and I have actually known each other for a very long time. And, you know, the whole team has always been incredible, right? And they've followed my journey from the very beginning. I mean, I can literally tell you when Bridget was going to start her own magazine. And I'll never forget, I was one of her biggest supporters, her very biggest fan. And I was like, you can do this. And at the same time, she had a bunch of health conditions, other things that had happened, things in life that just didn't seem like it was going to work. And so I actually had a misa, in Spanish is a mass, a church, right, for the Catholic faith. And I said a mass for her. And in order for everything to kind of align itself, she goes, I don't know what you did, Jackie, but like my whole life took a totally different turn. So she ended up founding Tampa Bay Business and Wealth Magazine. Again, I've always been a subscriber. I've just, been a person that I've always cheered on, a lot of my friends who have graced the cover. And I just knew that in Tampa, everybody kind of sort of knows me as the Daughter of Tampa, thanks to the past mayor, Bob Buckhorn. So him and his wife, Kathy, and they've just really done a great job integrating me, because I went to him when I just had an idea and I said, hey, do you know anybody that might want this or need this or could help? And so he really helped to turn around. And why I never left Tampa is because I was always able to be a big fish in a small pond. So it's been really fun to be able to connect to all these amazing people.
Well, tell us a little bit about your story. You're known now as being an entrepreneur, but you started off as a doctor.
Yes. So it's definitely a story of not intending to be an entrepreneur. It first started actually when my beautiful baby girl, she made me sick. I was pregnant with her and I had an emergency C-section and I vomited for 3 days straight and literally nothing worked for me. And so finally I got desperate and I asked for a napkin, rolled it up on an acupressure point that's found on the wrist. It's like P6. And then from there, my stepmom came walking up with a peppermint plant that she bought from Home Depot. And she said, hey, smell these leaves. And it worked, believe it or not. And I was like, wow, this is awesome voodoo.
So was she gardening or did she come over with the intention to give you peppermint?
She did, because she read on Google. I mean, we had tried everything, all things that are like what we utilize in anesthesia for post-op nausea and vomiting.
And you are a certified anesthesiologist.
Correct. And I mean, and practicing anesthesia and being an naturopathic physician and being a physician myself, I know all the drugs, right? So I'm telling them, give me this, try this, all this stuff. Now, I don't make the best patient. That is for sure. But again, when we were trying all these different things, nothing worked. And so she Googled, hey, what else is to work for nausea and vomiting? And she saw peppermint. Well, she didn't have any peppermint oil, so she just bought a peppermint plant. And then finally, I asked for a piece of tape when I was at the hospital because I kept dropping the leaves, and I never had them when I needed them after breastfeeding. And so I taped that acupressure.
So she's walking in and she's like, well, most people bring flowers.
Yeah,
but
I'm bringing peppermint.
Yeah.
Because I want you to get some sort of relief. And because, let's face it, I was stuck in the hospital for 3 days and could not leave because I kept vomiting. And so that's the only thing that worked. And then that was the birth story of NoMo Bands. And just kind of playing back in my head as a physician, my father was the last of the Mohicans, meaning in anesthesia, that was the last group that you could actually own your own anesthesia group. So I knew that I was always going to be working for someone or some hospital, and you can never really define your own destiny. And so I don't know, entrepreneurship just came kind of natural. And it was honestly because everyone in my family and friends that I told about this idea that I wanted to make NoMo nausea bands, they thought I was crazy. If you can only imagine debt, medical school debt, that's very high. I was the only person working. And even my husband was like, no way that this will work. He was my first hire 6 months later. And so now, to be able to be represented on the cover of Tampa Bay Business and Wealth, and I don't know if you know this, but there are criteria and qualifications. So you have to be grossing over $10 million per year.
Wow.
And That being said, that my bands are only $12.99 or $10.99. I got to sell a lot of bands. So we went into hospitals in about 12 countries of the world, and we're also found in about almost 30,000 retailers like Walmart, CVS, Bed Bath & Beyond, Bye Bye Baby, Mare. I'm forgetting some, but yeah, it's been fun. It's been like the craziest ride of my life ever. And it was all because the Tampa Bay business community, which I just said, I know nothing. Can somebody help me? And they really did. They kind of like all.
Who are the people you'd like to thank along the way? Who helped you?
Yeah, so there's quite a few. Brian Hanrahan, he's kind of like the godfather of Tampa. He knows absolutely everyone. Is not an entrepreneur himself. He works for an insurance company, but he knows everyone. So he was the person who kind of introduced me to all of the beginning people, like the who's who of who do you need to know in Tampa. You know that I actually went to school with Akash and with Stan.
Sure.
We went to Sickles High School together after I went to Tampa Catholic. So that was a kind of a fun thing. But Susan Stackhouse, she was the first CEO of Stellar Partners, which is in airport gift shops. So she owns all of those. And she gave me a chance. She literally said to me like, hey, Jackie, you're like, why wouldn't my products be in some place for motion sickness? So she gave me a shot, and then I have my fairy godmother in business, Debbie Wheeler. She was amazing. Debbie Lundberg is another one. She taught me how to pitch. She taught me how to stand up in front of thousands and thousands of people and be confident in myself. So
let's come back to that. How do you pitch? What do you do to be successful with pitching? Like, how do you tell those stories?
I always say that, it comes from the story from within. You just have to be able to tell it right and be able to have other people understand it. So whenever I always say pitch to them if they have a pulse, meaning if you're talking to someone, that could be a potential, potential buyer, potential customer, potential investor, right? Potential person. And it might not just be theirs, but it might be somebody else that they know that can really integrate that story. And so I crafted my little 30-second pitch, and that's something that I'm able to say without a shadow of a doubt, like anytime. It's kind of like an HSN, roll,
yeah.
Like a B-roll or whatnot, but you are able to like talk to them. So if I were talking to you, I wouldn't necessarily bring up that NoMo Bands work for morning sickness and pregnancy, because you as a man would never experience that. But you've probably had a round of golf and you probably want to get better at your golf, your golf game. Or you've probably watched the NFL, which we utilized on the NFL teams. Or I would talk about maybe even overindulgence, how to stop a good hangover, right? So all of those things are definitely crafted towards the person that you're talking to.
Well, it's also easier to talk about something when it's actually a solution to a problem, right? Mm-hmm. And especially when you've experienced it, like you truly believe in it.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things that trained actors learn about when they're doing method acting. Like they literally psych themselves into believing that it's actually working, but it's so much easier when it really works.
Right. And it works instantly. So that was something that was super important. Everyone's seen the old 1980 sweatbands, right? They hadn't been literally
with the little
changed.
Plastic
bead.
Yeah.
So they haven't been changed since I was born, literally. Mm-hmm. So if you can imagine that product is almost 40 years old. And so it hasn't ever been revised. And the problem is even if you're starting to feel sick, let's say you're on a boat, well, you're supposed to put it on 45 minutes ahead of time. Well, how did you know? So instead, NoMo Bands, you literally throw them on, you smell them, and it instantly stops you from vomiting. And so from that, then came NoMo Migraine to help people to reduce headaches and migraines, and now NoMo Sleepless Nights.
And you seem to have just sort of naturally taken to marketing. I mean, I'll be the first one to admit it's logical.
Oh my gosh, that is the sweetest thing anybody has ever said. I feel like I have my biggest flaws, right, when it comes to marketing. But I'm a big believer of growth hacking. Mm-hmm. I know that sounds weird, but I don't think about it the way everybody else does. So as a physician, for example, I first went to OBGYN offices and said, I don't want you to sell this. Instead, I want you to recommend this in your brand new patient folders. So I'm going to give you coupon cards of where you can find my product at the local, stores, whether that's Walmart or CVS or whatever.
Activation sampling.
Right. Exactly. And so that was something that I did. And people thought it was almost like revolutionary that for $1.62, I'm able to have a physician give out a packet and my paperwork is in there saying, try this if you suffer from morning sickness. Even though some of them wanted to sell my products. And I said, no, it's okay. You'll find them at the hospitals when they go to deliver. And so that's where we're also found, in labor and delivery suites across the country, actually 11 countries.
That's incredible. And so your first retail outlet was the airport stores?
That was my first retail outlet, was airport stores. And then my first, I always say pitch to your second best option first, if that makes sense. I went to Bed Bath & Beyond. I know that sounds crazy.
That's like going to like the top.
Well, Bed Bath & Beyond is where you find like home ec goods, but I also knew that they had a Bye Bye Baby is also one of their brands. So that was something for me where I wanted to get into. Okay. So I practiced my retail pitch first with them and literally found them on LinkedIn. I'm an advocate, I guess you could say, for LinkedIn, because I feel like you are connected to everyone. Business is the business of people. Right. It's not about products. It's not about services. And it's so interesting when you see that you're linked to somebody else, you have this almost natural feeling of like, well, I must connect with them also. It's that comfort, like that comfort factor.
That's really good advice, because I think it's really difficult to introduce yourself or to solicit on behalf of yourself. Like, I was always raised that way, to like stay humble, like don't pitch or brag or any of those kinds of things. Like typically that's just sort of like that was my upbringing, being raised in the South. We were like, hey, you gotta, stay humble. But it's very natural on like a LinkedIn platform, because you're like, hey, my good friend is connected with this other person. Yeah. So why not? Hey, so-and-so.
Right.
So
and you never know where that's going to lead. Yeah. I always say that that's like one of my favorite stories. I sat on a panel with Jason, who is the CEO of Teladoc, and we sat on a panel a long time ago as a physician, had nothing to do with it, never thought in a million years that I would now be working with him, not in my inventions, my products, but in my newest company, Doc OTC. So I invented, or I would say patent pending, doctor recommended over-the-counter or OTC product fulfillment for telemedicine visits. So I'm just a shopping cart for telemedicine.
Yeah, that's brilliant. We were talking about that a little bit before the show. And I think you're onto something really cool there.
Thank you.
One of the things that I think is really, really important is your point about you never know who you're talking to. You never know who they know.
Absolutely.
Where they've been in life. So it's important to always treat people with respect, integrity.
100%.
Right.
Like I practice 2 days a month or whatnot at the hospital just to keep my license. And I know everyone literally from the staff that cleans the floors, the night staff, not even the day. I know the night and the daytime staff, everyone who could help, because when you're in a code situation or you're in a situation and you need help, there is something to be said about being able to say every person's name and knowing them on a personal level. And even, the janitorial staff at nighttime, if I take late call or whatever it is, when they see me, they run up and give me hugs. And it's important. I treat the janitor the same way I treat the CEO. We are all people. We're all human. Like, remove all the titles, everything. We should all be treated as such, because we're all infinitely beautiful in our own mastery and the way that we were created. So,
yeah, that reminds me a lot of Eastern philosophy. And I think what's unique about the way that you've kind of talked about your holistic view of medicine is that you're incorporating not only the Western but also Eastern.
There's absolutely a place. I'm again, as a naturopath, I believe that there is a place for Western and Eastern, right? Because we have incredible advancements. But did you know that 1 out of every 4 medications that are found within the Amazon are found in the Amazon because of a plant or an animal or some crazy mosquito or a bug or the semen of salmon, for example, right? All of these things are incredible. What do? We change it and modify it so it can get on quicker or come off quicker or do different things or work faster or work longer. But going back to everything that we find in nature, right? It's the same principles. Botany is really just the physiologic way that your body takes in those, I don't want to even call them drugs, I want to call them wellness tactics or holistic medicine, and how that your body changes it. It's the same thing with other type of medications. So I feel like everybody needs this multimodal approach, because wellness is the it factor right now. And I've always said from the very beginning, better health and wellness naturally. That's what I feel like I can give to the entire world, not just with my products, but also with, my medical technology solution. It's the same concept, really bringing it all together so that people can get better faster.
Well, it seems logical that we would find these molecules out in nature. I mean, there's an infinite number of organisms, it seems like, millions and millions and millions of different types of organisms that all have specific functions. And then the biology of it is that these molecules, these chemicals have been, manifested or evolved or somehow created to serve functions or create reactions. And why not identify those things and then use them in medicine? Or even better, how about we identify those things and just include them as part of your diet?
Yes. So you actually made a really interesting note. You said, how many nutrition classes did you take in medical school? And I was like, 0.
Right.
But I didn't even recognize how vastly important it was until we looked at what is considered a macronutrient. And for me in anesthesia, I don't just look at a patient as one thing, right? A cardiologist will look at a patient's heart. A vascular surgeon will look at the patient's, vessels. We have to look at the patient from the top to the very bottom because physiologically everything changes. And so that doesn't change the approach that I've always looked at people from everything. It's almost kind of like an investigator.
You must love that show, House.
I do. I really do love the show. I don't get to watch very much TV, and I haven't actually watched it in a while, but it's something to get my mind off. But it drives me insane that every time somebody is put under anesthesia, there's never an endotracheal tube. You don't know what that is. It's basically a tube that goes in your windpipe. It just bothers me because they don't have somebody. I guess the writers are not writing. Anesthesia doesn't matter.
They don't know that part.
Right.
Yeah, that's too bad. Well, maybe it looks bad on camera.
Maybe. Hey, you know better than I would, for sure.
There might be a reason for that, but
maybe it reflects or something.
I do like that. That's one of the things that I love personally the most is just that whole puzzle. It's like maybe there's some little, way that this thing could be better or this thing, could be improved. And I think for anybody who is an inspiring inventor like yourself, I think there's hope. Yeah. Everything hasn't been invented yet.
Oh, absolutely. The mother of necessity is invention, and the father of desperation is innovation. So I have always looked at that because, we all went through COVID-19. We all went through this pandemic shutdown. We all went through a massive change. I always tell everybody, we finally got on our first cruise ship. Literally, finally got on Royal Caribbean for it.
Thank you, Nausea Bands.
Yes, exactly. Boom. Yeah. All of a sudden, no more cruising industry, right?
Yeah.
We were in all of these airport stores. No planes were flying. So it was just, I felt like every time that we ended up going into some place, boom, we just got knocked down. And it really showed that, there's something to be said about being able to pivot. And I hate using the term small business because I make a joke that women in business, we're always like, oh, it's a woman-owned small business. But when's the last time you've ever heard a man call anything small? Never, right? No. Nothing of theirs is ever small. So I've tried to change that to just a business or emerging. But it's true though. I feel like that we are still much more able to pivot and we're able to really get to identify the problem in a quicker manner or methodology.
Well, by the nature of having a more streamlined or less staff or less layers in your organization, you can be a lot scrappier.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't know that. I mean, my entire team, we had an office and then now we don't. And you know why? It's not because I wanted to come back to an office setting, but they liked working from home. And I have the most incredible staff. And so when they liked working from home, they can throw in a load of laundry in between us doing our meetings. Well, why not? Right?
Right.
I always recommend and suggest that they work whatever is best for them. So in my sales team, if they are night owls, then pick a location, pick a country that is, however many hours different than you work best. I'm a person, I work best at 3:00 in the morning. I am up, I work out, and then I start working before I take the kids to school and then after.
That's incredible. How big is your team now?
So we have 26, and that doesn't include our Amazon team is actually like another different entity. Our marketing firm, that's a whole nother, but just 26 of us that are mine.
Well, so one of the things I really like to do with this platform of this podcast is sort of help break down some of those mental inhibitors for people listening to this.
Oh, I
so
like
that
this.
way when they've got an idea, when they've got an itch, that we help them understand that yes, it's a challenge, but it's also doable.
It's totally doable. I read recently, I want to say it's like 90% of all inventions stop or fail because someone within the infancy stage of an idea said it was wrong or bad, or it's never going to make any money, or it's never going to do anything like that. And I found that really shocking. And I think me being just like the strong-willed Peruvian American, as a Latina chick, let me tell you, everyone I knew, like, the hardest sale is my friends and family because they can't fathom that I've actually invented something that could help them. But I just didn't listen to anybody. I knew that I wanted it, and I was so, I hate to use this term thirsty, but it was true. I was thirsty for it, and I was like, I'm going to get this at all costs, and I'm going to figure this out. So I've always been that person. I do love school. I swear I'll get my Harvard MBA. I take one class at a time. But again, it's just, I love school and I love learning. And I feel like you can do anything if you just dedicate your time to be able to learn something, but also recognize how much you cost per hour. And if someone that you can hire can do it better and faster, you need to hire it out because your time is valuable also. And I'll just give you from a personal aspect. I was spending hours on laundry. So I had to hire somebody besides my cleaning to do my laundry, to like fold it and put it away. And she comes to the house every week, right? And that's something that I feel like it's totally worth it, because if I add up how much time I cost in doing that, oh my goodness, that's crazy. It's like a really expensive.
Right. You could be launching a new product.
Exactly. Yeah. So figure out the things, and I'm actually the biggest cheerleader for people. I've always said I'm like the master connector. Like, I want to help everyone. And I think it's really important that people are told, yes, you can do this, or even find a mentor, not even a mentor, a cheerleader, find somebody who's within the same realm. I had a guy that called me, he was a chiropractor, and he invented something that was like within the same nausea realm, like to help with nausea. And even though he's considered my competitor, I was like, here, let me help you. Let me show you. Right. You're actually pricing your product way too high. And for every product that's sold off of it, you're going to be giving Publix $2.06. And he was like flabbergasted. He's like, why are you helping me? And I'm like, because someone did that for me.
Right.
So do, then say. Do something, then talk about it later on social media. Because if it doesn't happen on social media, it never happened.
That's a good point. I'm a huge believer in reaching out to your competitors and looking for ways to help, because one of these days they're going to be in a situation where maybe they're in over their head, maybe they need some help. Like, why can't we do more with more?
Yeah. I love that. I mean, that's exactly the same principle. And not everybody thinks that way. I feel like those of us who are very entrepreneurial in the way that we just not just think, but act, understand. Because there's been so many times that I hear other women-owned companies, and they're like, why are you helping me? I'm like, what do you mean why? Like, that you would want to help someone else so they wouldn't have to go through the same thing, because everyone else just feels like they need to hoard and like everything is mine.
It's that zero-sum game. Like, literally, that's where the name of our agency, Bake More Pies, comes from. It's the opposite of people thinking that way. It's how do we bake more pies together? I love that. Right.
I didn't know that. That's so interesting.
Literally it. That's literally it. We were talking with, we were at the beginning of our company, we were named, just like every other agency out there, 2 names. So it was my name, Watson. My first name's Watson. The other founder's first name, Melvin. So it's Watson and Melvin Incorporated. And if you ever get an invoice from us, it's going to say Watson and Melvin Inc. on there. But our DBA is Bake More Pies. We always knew we were going to update our name.
Right.
And we were talking about how there was a client who just was negotiating with us for sport. I mean, they were going to make probably $1 million off of this project we were doing. It's super small. It's like $3,000 or something in terms of like agencies doing work for people. That's a small amount of money. And they were just making it to where, like, we were trying to approach it as a win-win. Like, how do we help you so we can do the next project and help the next project? And they were just making it to where it almost made sense for us not to help them or do the project, because there was nothing left in there for us. Like, wouldn't you want me to win? So I'm around to help you with the next thing, especially if I'm good at it. And my business partner said, well, you know, when that starts happening, I hate people with a zero-sum mindset, I just go in the kitchen and I bake more pies. And I was like, Trey, like you
That's
just named
it.
our company.
Yeah.
You just named our company. And so that's always been the root. And we treat our clients that way. We treat, our employees that way.
Yeah, our employees, we always say, so the first initial, whenever you get the email that you've been hired or whatever, it says, welcome to the NoMo family. That's something
awesome.
that's like super important. And for Doc OTC, it's kind of interesting. Sam, who is my co-CEO, he's my CTO as well, but he actually was one of my mentors. He at the time was the CTO for WebMD, or maybe that happened after he was at Microsoft. So very high up, very well,
jobs.
Very well to do, exactly. And so we just have always had a friendship. Right. And he's always kind of been like the big brother, like to help me out. And it was crazy when I came to him with my idea of Doc OTC, of this online shopping cart for telemedicine. He's like, do you want to do this? And I was like, do I really want two companies all at the same time? I'm like, well, you know what? NoMo totally runs on its own. So I can step down and they run it because they're incredible. They got this. So then I can focus all my efforts. And then his mentor, who Fernando, is our CFO. And he was the CFO for Johnson & Johnson and Arthrocare and Medtronic. I have a dream team.
Nice bench.
I do. I have a super dream team. And so the one thing that, I've never actually raised any capital. I've always just made money. I know that sounds really silly, but I didn't know how expensive developers were. So if you're a developer listening to this, hey, you want a job? But no, seriously.
Medical school.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's just, I didn't know. And that's something that, we are looking at raising funds. And what's exciting is we're going to be trying this kind of out of the box. It's called a Reg CF. It's crowdfunding. Okay. So imagine like a Kickstarter, but for investors, so that other investors can say, I bought Doc OTC for $1,000 or whatever it is. Check this out. And then my hope or thought process is they also have invested in other telemedicine or telehealth platforms, and we're only about to increase their bottom line, basically increase their annual rate or amount by $778 million. And for over the counter, that has been completely neglected on all these telehealth calls, it's over $5 billion.
So if anybody listening to this wants to make a micro investment in technology and med.
Yeah, it's called Doc OTC, and
where would they do that?
So it's under what's called Start Engine.
Okay.
Start Engine. We actually haven't officially launched our platform right now. We have quick. Yeah, exactly. We haven't launched as of yet. That's why I've been talking to you about the video. Sure. But we have one more step, and it's just to create this video for us, and then boom, we're kind of off to the races.
You seem like an incredibly driven person. Like, where do you get your energy from?
I am a naturally energetic person. That's probably why I was a USF cheerleader. But no, I've always had...
While in medical school?
I was pre-med. I was pre-med at the time. I actually only was able to do it my freshman and senior year because it was a lot. Practice 2 hours in the morning, class all day, and then 3, sometimes 4 hours at night. It was a lot. But I had a 6-pack, so it was so worth it.
Yeah.
Now I don't. Please don't.
College athletics. There is something to be said for college athletics because there is a discipline, there's a routine, there's a training, there's a part of it while you're, pre-campus? Like, what's that part of your brain that's still forming?
Your hippocampus.
Hippocampus, thank you very much. So hippocampus is still forming. This is the perfect time to like really train people on some of those things. That is the secret sauce to
and to learn themselves.
Right.
I always because we have a big intern program. We're actually like one of the favorites, I guess you could say, utilized at multiple different universities, not just masters, not just MBA, but also, regular collegiate. And that's something that I train them to listen to their body and tell me when they work best. Yeah. When are they the most creative? When are they able to do monotonous tasks?
That's a novel concept.
Yeah, because I want them to be the most proficient that they can be. So if I don't have 100% of them, that's why I always say that we have what's called the perfect 10 whenever I'm like working with the interns. And it's 10 minutes of something that's completely mindless that they can do, and they know it's routine. And so that they can drop their baggage at the door and literally just focus in on their internship and what their project is, or what is it that we're actually doing to accomplish.
I think that's a really important concept because a lot of times, it's one of the reasons why I like working with consultants sometimes, because you can almost get like 90% or 80% of what you need from a consultant, like in the first like few hours, right? And so it's so important to like be able to focus on what you're trying to do, because you can be incredibly productive when you're focused.
Absolutely.
And for me personally, like when I think like when I'm most productive, that's changed for me. I used to be somebody who would stay up late, and be able to work through a problem. But now, maybe it's just getting older or whatnot, but now I'm best in the morning.
Yeah, me too.
So can your team change their schedules? Like, how does that work?
They can. I mean, the only thing that is set in stone is our team talks, our team talks. And then we do NoMo brunch. We do that once every month or whatnot. But as long as they have their stuff ready for their updates and everything is kind of, I'm not a big fan of a million meetings and getting nothing done. That's not it. We have one. Right. And so they all know who to report to. And so if there is really a problem that comes up, and they all have my cell phone, literally they can text me at any hour of the night, literally, and say, hey, I've got an issue, I've got a problem. And my next leader up can't help. So then I somehow have to kind of figure it out. So, and I've always been that person that they feel comfortable that they can come to. It's not like, oh, I can't text my boss. Instead, it's like, I want to text her because she can give me an answer a lot faster than anybody else.
Coming from a place, the Tampa Bay area is famous for Home Shopping Network. Now QVC owns them. There's been stories of entrepreneurs that have come through, that whole program, mass marketing, being able to reach millions of people all at once, take orders. It sounds like you're kind of on that path.
Well, I won American Dreams, the HSN American Dreams program over in Cincinnati. And I literally I had the best pitch.
So HSN, which is headquartered here, you had to go to Cincinnati for that?
Yes. So they were trying to find like the best of the best, the new HSN type of product. And we got like a sticker on Good Housekeeping, the magazine. That's or whatever.
Incredible.
It was really cool experience until I met their legal team. And so because my product is actually clinically proven and it actually has a form and function, I couldn't say anything. So I could just it smells great. And that's it. So unless that they can't, differentiate the name NoMo Nausea, it kind of talks for itself. I wasn't really able to say anything. And that was really difficult for a person who can't stay quiet.
That's one of the things I appreciate attorneys, but I also don't like it because I just want to go. Yeah. I just want to get started. Like, let's start making this thing. And they're paid to say no.
Right. They are. And you know what? They can protect you, though. I will say, I will shout out to my legal team. They have gotten me out of something, out of some trouble, meaning that it was crazy. It was the FDA is such an archaic system.
Yeah.
And we have everything. Thought we did what was right. They said we weren't supposed to file this way, so we didn't. And then it came back around to nip us right in the tush later on. And so again, they got us out of it, and they were like, incredible. This is a natural medicinal. Why are you even looking at this? This is a wristband. We have more regulation as a wristband than something that's physically inserted into the body. That doesn't make any sense.
So how many different varieties of wristbands do you have now?
So we actually have 6, and that includes not just our medical line, but also our dog band and our kids bands. So we have NoMo Nausea, NoMo Migraine, NoMo Sleepless Nights, and those are in varying, and then we have our medical line and then our dog product.
And what's next for you?
So I've been wanting to invent Nomo Stress. That's been something, because right now everybody is kind of in this mental fog, and we're finally starting to talk about mental health. Yeah. And I just think that it would be such a it would be so complimentary. But I also have a lot of these women who are no longer menstruating, who have been dying and begging me for NoMo hot flashes. So that is something else. But there's a lot more to come. I have in the pipeline of my patent, I still have NoMo itch, NoMo pain, NoMo cough and cold. So there's been a lot of other things that, again, it takes a long time to get a lot of these things that go through clinical trials and tests. And I've been very blessed that people in the community, people in the medical community are looking for products like mine. They're like, wow, you're the only person who has it. I'm like, yeah, I have the patent for it. Thanks.
That's so important to have that patent protection.
Yeah.
Speaking of attorneys.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. And I wish that they would have a better system for international.
Well,
but that's a different conversation.
Your product looks like one that would be, from what I've seen, you would be high on the list of things that other countries might want to rip off.
It could. I will say that when we are 100% made in the U.S., I actually have one of my fulfillment centers is actually in Zephyr Hills, which is not too far away from Tampa. But before, when we first started, we went to a medical manufacturer in China. And it's interesting. I went to a totally different avenue. I brought my friends with me, meaning that same manufacturer made small parts of my other friends' products. So there was 6 of us. And we said, if you copy anything of any of ours, we all go.
Yeah.
So it was a really different tactic. Again, I'm still close with them. I still technically have them. They still have some machinery, but we don't utilize them anymore just because we're able to facilitate the volume needed in the United States. And it's only like a few cents cheaper.
That's a beautiful thing. I mean, why not? Why not have Americans,
absolutely,
hire people locally to help you?
And I love the fact that I can say that we're local because, again, Pasco County loves the fact that they're like, oh, we get to talk about you, and the company and take a look at everything. And when I tell like the newscasters, I'm like, if you come in my manufacturing plant, it's like for real manufacturing. Like it's not, people have this idea of it's a wristband and they're like, well, what's the science in that? I'm like, there's actually a lot of science that goes behind it. And I've been very blessed and very lucky that basically my engineer, my product engineer that's actually there, that's on site, we can over pizza and beer basically play around with different settings, different PSI, different oils, different infusions, things like that. So
that's incredible.
Yeah, it's been a really fun ride, and I've had the best people I just feel like the best people, they drop out of the sky. You just never know when you meet them and you're like, wait a second, and actually his son, we practiced up at UF together. And that, of all things.
Well, it's one of those things where it just seems like all the pieces are just kind of falling in place. I mean, even you're talking about medical trials, having your medical education background, that probably really helps you navigate and have those conversations about
it
how
does.
to conduct that, right?
Yeah, it does. And it's actually not me. So there are other, there's different medical facilities, hospitals, medical schools. They were looking for products for postoperative nausea and vomiting, chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting. Other entities like the veterinarian was looking for something to help with dog car sickness for the dogs that are being transferred from one facility to another. And I just happened to have the product and I said, let's work together. What do you need from me? Right. They said, we just need products and we need, our control and we need the actual real products. And then we'll do the tests and we'll let you know how it goes. And Shriners was probably one of our biggest ones. And it was amazing. It was an amazing experience to be able to have 1,500 children.
But again, Shriners,
yeah. I know.
It's literally like a mile from here.
I know.
Their headquarters, world headquarters is like a mile from here.
So I've always been really good, very intentional too. When Mayor Buckhorn used to call me the Daughter of Tampa,
that's incredible.
It was true.
So how does that even start? Like, were you just having, just bumped into him and hey, who are you? What are you doing? How does that even happen?
Yeah. So we had just constantly we're doing different events and we kept seeing each other, and we became like on a hugging basis, and he's like, come here, kiddo. I'm like, all right. And so we just kept doing more like interviews together, not intentionally, but it just kept happening that we were at the same place at the same time.
And then, you've got literally the political leader of the area wanting you to be successful too. And so that
and it also, whenever we got into Walmart, the mayor up in Arkansas, or not mayor, excuse me, the governor in Arkansas was giving $250,000 to move my company because they wanted women-owned businesses to relocate. And I remember I sent him an email and I said, hey, Mayor Buckhorn, I know that you've been phenomenal, but I have this opportunity and they're going to give me money.
So when you say stay in Tampa, that was not an empty threat.
This was not an empty threat.
You were being wooed
exactly
to go to Arkansas.
Yes. I was being wooed. And so he sent me, he said, let's talk about this. And so he called me and he said, I'm telling you right now, I can introduce you to more people that will have a more profound impact on your business than just one retailer if you go up there.
That's right.
And I was like, okay. And that's how we started the conversations with other distributors in different countries. I was sitting at the table at the time with the vice president. It was a round table and no one was talking. And of course, me being the only Hispanic female business owner, I'm like, wait, I got something to say, in that I was talking about the different challenges of, having products that were overseas and trying to bring it here and what tax implications and different things like that. And it just happened. And this was before COVID, right? And so it just happened to be that they listened to me. And then I started winning different awards from the Small Business Administration and really taking note and recognizing that there are some incredible talent that's here in Florida and specifically in Tampa.
How do you identify and utilize those tools that are available? Because some of those awards, some of those things, like one of the things that a lot of people don't know about is there's multiple free trade zones here in the Tampa Bay area. So if you're importing things, you can import raw materials. They can be improved here. That's what a free trade zone is. You can actually bring them in duty free, improve them here, and then there's massive tax savings.
So my biggest thing, and what I tell everyone, is get to know your chamber. So that's what I started first. The Greater Tampa Bay Chamber, I was their startup scholar.
So how do you get to know your chamber?
So I looked up literally Chamber of Commerce Tampa, and there was a few of them.
Once you're in, how do you navigate a chamber? I actually want to know.
Okay.
So like every time I've gone to any chamber event, I'm there's some outgoing people there. They're all salespeople. They're all looking to sell something to you.
First, you look at the speaker list.
Okay.
Once you get to the speaker list, you then friend every single speaker that's there on LinkedIn, and you tell them, I can't wait to meet you whenever this happens. All right. Afterwards, you then approach them, and then it's just by osmosis. Every person that was trying to work with them keeps seeing that you're saying hello. Now I have the added advantage of being a female. I hug everyone. So they're like, wow, she's hugging. Fair. I know she's hugging everyone. And oh, she must be somebody important. And then that's when they end up coming in to talk to me. Or I've actually had it to where other friends of mine or other people that I know that are speaking or they know the other person, I'll say, hey, can you do me a favor? Would you walk me over and introduce me to such and such?
So you're like a strategic networker.
Very strategic.
Scientific approach, strategic.
And my team knows the whole shebang, meaning the second that I get whatever, like let's say it's business cards, I quickly go to the bathroom, I snap a picture. The best thing to do is literally from that point, they will go and they will submit like an email to them saying, hey, it was so awesome to meet you. I can't wait to talk more about what we were talking about. And then all of a sudden people are like, wow, she really cares for me.
She's really on it.
So it's important to have a really good team, but you have to be able to navigate, because if not, you can't be everywhere. Right. I am known as the no nausea lady whenever I go around, and now I'm hoping to be known as the Doc OTC lady. But it's really important to be able to identify name, face, but then know who you're going after. Right. I mean, be laser focused on them. And here's another little hint is if they are speaking in like a massive panel, be the first one that is there by the stairs when they come down. So then you can hand them your card and you can ask for theirs.
That's really brilliant advice. I bet there's millions and millions and millions of dollars that could be made just from the last 3 minutes of this conversation.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to give all my it's what I do.
But a lot of people just don't do those things. It seems logical. You've got to have enough confidence to put yourself out there, but it's easy and strategic if you just do what you just said.
Yeah. And I have no fear of no. And this is the reason why, because you're in the same exact spot that you were in before you asked the question. So why not? Right. What, and I don't know, maybe it's just cause I've never been really embarrassed. I've always just been sure, go for it. If they tell me no, it's okay. Yeah. I asked my husband out. I've always been that person. So I was like, hey, you want to go to breakfast? He's like, yeah, sure. Okay. He was just nobody, they don't even know what to do with me half the time. And so I just feel like it's really important, but I'll take the ACG event that happened recently. It was funny that I was the only entrepreneur that was raising capital that was there amongst all of the venture capitalists, right? That it's like a unity of all these venture capitalists. I'm the only entrepreneur. And I had messaged 15 of them saying, I can't wait to get a chance to meet you. Let's talk while we're there.
Right.
People came up to me and were like, hey, you messaged me on LinkedIn. Oh, hi. Oh my gosh, it's so good to meet you. And so they were, and somebody actually made the point and they said, you know, you're probably the smartest entrepreneur in Tampa because there's no other place where 200 venture capitalists are all in the same place that are flown in from all different places.
That's like a feeding frenzy over you.
Yeah, exactly.
You could have raised any amount of money you wanted.
And that's why we have our conversations thereafter. I mean, it's loud and it's really difficult to like get to the nitty gritty, but I was able to, in a very short, quick sentences or short, quick phrases, be able to figure out, ooh, are they the right one for me? No, yes or no, and then cross them off the list and then go to the next one.
That's really brilliant.
Thanks. But another thing is that's really important. So you have the SBDC, you also have the chamber, like I was talking about, but you also have trade. So there are these organizations that are meant to help you. So if you are a small business and if you do business within the Florida area, right, they will actually give you grants to extend your network to other countries.
Do you need any special qualifications or statuses to take advantage of these things?
Don't quote me. But I do know, like the SBDC is the one that ended up connecting me. And so we got a grant for Germany. So what they will do is they will do a matchmaking session where they will sit you down. You will have a conversation first with us, right? The trade organization in Germany, and meet with others. So they will kind of weed out who's the most important distributors, medical distributors for me and retailers. And then they sit us down and we do 6 meetings in a row that would normally cost $20+ thousands of dollars, right? And it's free. You pay for it and then they give you a grant on top of it. So it's free. I mean, there's these things that are out there that people just don't know of. And maybe it's because I've always been very good with money, but I like to utilize what we have here. I mean, they're asking for people to take it.
There really are some good government connected programs. And I guess being connected with the mayor, he was able to help filter through and help potentially, and besides the fact that you're at all these networking events and all of those sorts of things. I'm really impressed with how you've been able to navigate everything.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Definitely doing a better job than me.
Oh, stop. Listen, we met at a networking event. And again, you do have to put yourself out there. And I will say, being a mom with kids, it's sometimes hard. And I make my children, they are a part of my business calendar. So, and they get 3 non-negotiables per year, meaning I have to be there, right? One is the Maria Montessori play that my daughter is a part of. Yeah. I have to be there. I have to be there at her cheerleading competition, and then she gets one more. But that they know they got to pick them because I can't always be mom 100% of the time. And if anyone says that they figured out work-life balance, I would really like to know what their take is on that, because it's a weighting scale. Whoever needs the most attention at that point in time is what you give attention to.
You do. You have to figure out in that moment, like, where are my priorities? And sometimes you can't just create a rule that lasts forever.
Yeah, no. You have to be nimble and you have to be able to kind of adjust. But I take my kids with me I love them to see what an entrepreneur is, because there's now like college classes and stuff like that for entrepreneurship, but it needs to start when they're younger. My son has all of these ideas, and he actually invented NoMo Dog, our pet product. So it was a really interesting, just kind of turn of events. He was at the boardroom table and I asked if there was any other questions, comments, concerns, and he raises his little hand up.
That must have been a proud moment.
It was. And he goes, I was like, yes, Logan. He goes, well, mommy, you have one for daddy when he gets seasick. You have one for you when you get vertigo. You have one for me whenever I'm in the car. But Batchy, who at the time is 2 years younger than him, our dog, he pukes on my shoes when we go on a family car trip. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Do you think that dogs have acupressure points? He's like, let's find out. So we did. We made it like a project for him at school. And then he ended up inventing NoMo Dog. So
that's incredible.
And we just sold it into Chewy. So go pick it up.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
so that was
huge.
fun.
That's huge.
Yeah,
there might be a movie in your future.
Oh gosh, that would be amazing. But
yeah.
Yeah.
So if someone's listening to this and they're obviously going to be impressed by you and want to talk to you, how can they reach out to you? How can they find you? Are you willing to share advice? And I mean, it sounds like you are, like other entrepreneurs, other people who have ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the best and the easiest way is Instagram. I know that sounds really corny, but at NoMo Nausea, that's NoMoNausea.
And that's you.
NoMo Nausea.
So if they message, it's you.
Well, there is a team, but again, it kind of filters back to me. But the best place of all times, like if you want to talk to me, by messaging me, it is on LinkedIn, honestly. And by the way, leave a note, right? That you heard a podcast that I was, the Law of Relevancy podcast, like leave a note, because so many people just say connect. And I'm like, I don't know who they are. There's a million different people. So if you like give
differentiate yourself.
Yeah, differentiate yourself and give context as to where or how I have been impacted or whatever that is. And I'm always happy to help. I can't help everyone just because of time constraints. But if it's something that's like an easy, like, hey, you know what? You need more products. Like one of my friends she invented Cold Be Gone. It's like a honey that goes upside in your nose. And we just said, she goes, hey, I was like, I want to get in more grocery chains. And she's like, well, I want to get into more pharmacies. We're like, here's our Rolodex. Here's this person.
Wow.
And that's how we all make money, right? Like it's very easy. We call it a boss, I'm not going to use the term, but a boss bee club, because it's just, if you have products that are utilized, that are mompreneur type products,
right?
Why not trade information? Why not trade buyers? I mean, really, because that's ultimately who's going to give you money at the end of the day.
Well, there's a lot of validation coming from someone. If you talk to your buyer who's obviously having success with your products and you say, hey, you should check this out, that's going to carry an incredible amount of weight.
Right. And knowing exactly what they're looking for and giving them that other, because again, retail is, we've had some packaging snafus. So I won't sit here and tell you that I have all the answers, because I don't, because it's always like a work in progress.
Of course.
But I will say that I've learned some things, right? Like when it comes to shelf space in retail, it's based around width. So if you can my original package, which I wish I had one in my hand right now, it's like a chip bag, right? A resealable, 4 centimeter this way chip bag. Or 4 inch, not centimeter, 4 inch chip bag. And the problem is now I can fit 2 tubes next to it,
nice,
right? In the same amount of space. So my value of how much is being sold per square footage,
that's right,
is now doubled. Why? Because I shrank my packaging sideways. So I made it a slim tube instead of a bag.
And really that goes back to just listening. It's listening to what your stakeholders need from you.
Yep. And listening to what the buyers, because ultimately they are your customers.
That's my point.
Right.
You're listening to them. It's like, hey, I could sell twice as much of this stuff if you could make it, package it differently.
And I was like, absolutely. You'll see a brand new mock-up, and that's something else that I always tell people. They have to do something now. Strike when the iron's hot. Like, I don't care how busy you are. It's timing is everything. And when you're out of sight, you're completely out of mind. I have people that will call me or try to message me a year ago. I met you at this last year. I'm like, sorry, I don't remember. I don't recognize. I don't, because it wasn't relevant, but it was back then.
Right.
So just make that conscious effort to kind of do a debrief whenever you do any events. I do a debrief, like when I get in my car. That's my debrief moment where I can sit there and I'm like, oh, I have to follow up with these people. And I do tabs on the corner of my cards. Anytime that I find somebody very interesting or that I really want to, I do a little tab trick, so that I know that that's the one I need to get back to first.
That's really cool. And so you also have a podcast. So if people like what you're talking about, they want to listen to you at scale, subscribe to your podcast.
Yeah. So Pregnancy Peakology podcast, where science and entertainment obviously merge together. But again, it's just giving pregnant moms or people who are planning on getting pregnant, right? Even the IVF journey, because they need to know what is going on and what is my body trying to tell me. Now, it's not coming out of a textbook. It's literally coming out of me as a doctor with lots of experience, but also understanding that you can giggle. It's okay.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I am not afraid to talk about anything. One of my most famous podcasts is Will I Poop on My Delivery Room Table?
That's a good one.
Yeah. And let me tell you,
It's an excellent question.
it's crazy, right? The number of people that come into the blog and that podcast is insane. Why? Because people don't talk about it. And I'm like, I don't mind, right? I'm the outlandish doctor and I'm not, I'm comfortable with it. Hence why I have over 50,000 TikTok followers. They really like my random content. So
I love your brand.
Stuff.
I love your brand. I love what you're doing.
Thank you.
And we're going to be following you. We're going to be
Awesome.
following you on this journey. And if there's anything we can do to help you, we'd love to talk about it.
Definitely. We got to talk about this video afterwards.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having
me. Really,
me.
really entertaining conversation. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. No, seriously. Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
You're welcome. And you're welcome back anytime. Maybe you can help co-host one day.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. Well, you can find the rest of the Law of Relevancy podcast anywhere where podcasts are found. You can find it on the Bake More Pie social media, the Law of Relevancy social media, and we're looking forward to seeing you again in the future. Thanks again.